Hey, welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 112, coming right back at you, day after the bonus episode. Now we're on the correct microphone. See, I can tap it. It makes a little sound. Isn't that cool? Sorry about that. Dude, sometimes I check like 9 times out of 10 which microphone I'm using. I'll turn on the what do they call it? Monitoring here in Audacity, and I'll just tap it. I'll just tap it before I start recording. The one time the 1 out of 10 time, that 10th time that I decide, whatever. That, of course, that's the time that it managed to get unplugged, so it switched back to using the webcam mic, of course. Well, sorry about that for the audio quality last episode, but hey, it's just a bonus episode, and no way I am re-recording an hour of stuff. My voice was tired by the end of that. So, yeah. So now we're back here with a regular-sized episode. Even though the bonus episode was an hour long. See, that would have been dreadful if I did both of those topics in the same episode. Christ. Anyway, this morning I ate a bagel. I made myself a bagel for breakfast. It was a raisin bagel. I don't know, they're a little too sweet for me, but it's fine. It's the only bagels we had in the house. So I toasted that. And then I've recently been getting really into this combo of toppings on my bagel. I put some cream cheese on, and then I put some jam on. I put some strawberry jam on. Or is it jelly? I can't remember if we have jelly or jam in the house. For reference, jam has, is pulp the right word? Jam has the fruit bits still in the mixture. I don't know what you'd call it. Still has it inside, whereas jelly, it's all processed out. Excuse me, Christ. And I think in the UK they switch it or something, or they call one of them preserves. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, I do a cream cheese and a jam, and I've become a big fan of it. At first brush, it might sound a little gross, and I might have thought about that some time ago. I might have thought the same way. Oh, that sounds gross. It's actually it's really nice. There's the sweetness, the sweetness versus the kind of I don't know what you describe cream cheese as having. It's like a savory kind of. Is that how I would say it? Cream cheese flavor. No, I don't. No, not different. Well, a flavor profile. Tangy, sweet, mild. Yeah. So there's a little sweetness, but it's kind of tangy, right? It's got that. It's not very aggressive. I think what works is that cream cheese itself does not have a very powerful taste to it, so it isn't these two really strong flavors clashing with each other. It's more of just it's a lot of sweet, and then there's a little bit of kind of tangy, mild cream cheese there that kind of evens it out. I used to be of the mind that something like that would be gross when you first hear it, but I started to think about food and different flavors a little differently when I remember a couple years ago I heard, I don't know, I was watching a video or something on what is American things that are weird outside of America, like just random little cultural things, and one of them was peanut butter and jelly. I was like, huh, really? And I read a comment from someone who was saying that they had Indian parents, who had, I don't know if they were immigrants but they were grown up in India, their parents had. And the idea of combining peanut butter and jelly in a sandwich was horrific to them. They were like, what the fuck? Which was really eye-opening for me, because as an American, that's the most normal thing that's like the most normal thing you could ever ever have. It's like the poster child for a basic sandwich in America that you take to lunch. So I started to think about it in a way that, like, I wonder if like, something sounds gross to me just because I have a very Americanized palate, in the same way that the person's parents might have a very Indianized, is that the word? Indianized palate. So, like, I've been more open to trying different kinds of flavors and things together, and not immediately being turned off by it. There are still things that I just don't like. Honestly, there's a couple South American and like Central American flavor combinations I do not care for. I remember I had a dish one time from like a Mexican place it was some kind of meat with mole, which I didn't know what mole was before I got it, and I was like, no, like, it doesn't, no, I don't want meat and sweetness. Completely ruins the meat flavor for me. Like, no, not chocolate, no. That's very not to my taste. And then also, I've never been one for a very common, I don't like the sweet and spicy. Excuse me. I don't like those like sweet and spicy candies. I've had a couple of those. I've tried them a few times over the years and just never did it for me. Always just tasted too weird. So there are things. I'm not just like an omnivore. I still have preferences, but I don't know, being open to like, I wonder if this would taste good with that. And a lot of times things actually do. I like anchovies on my pizza. I like the saltiness. Is it anchovies or oh god. I'm pretty sure it's anchovies. Is it anchovies or sardines? I can't remember. I think it's anchovies. So I remember saying that one time. I think I said sardines, and Kat looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, what? And she's like, do you mean anchovies? And I realized that I'd had it in my head that it was sardines because of Club Penguin, because I'm pretty sure there's like a pizza making mini game in Club Penguin from way back when I was a kid, and one of the toppings you could put on was sardines. So whenever I saw fish on pizza, I just assumed it was sardines. In any event, let's get to the comment review. So we had one question last time technically 2 times ago, from Ryan, who leaves a very long comment. He says, it took the death of Rumbleverse to get more KI. I weep by the grave of the only BR I liked, while I excitedly wait for one of the most intelligent balanced teams in fighting games to put Rash 6 feet under. I don't get the joke because I haven't played enough KI to know if Rash is strong or weak. I remember playing a little bit of it, and I thought he was fun. So that's the extent of my knowledge of KI. As for my reactions to Day 3 Evo stuff, OG Raven is awesome, happy he's back. Strive just adding in more pre-existing characters is cool, but I think I'm just done with the game. 100 hours was enough for me. I see that. I kind of see that. Yeah, I'll probably jump back in a little bit and put a little more in if the lobbies are fixed. If the game is actually playable online. Playing Street Fighter 6 has reminded me, thinking about watching the Strive finals was like, man, I am not a fan of the round start meta in Strive. I find it very exhausting. It feels like a lot of matches, like versus characters like Nago, it feels like the entire game is decided in the first second of the round, which is really annoying. Very amused by the Aki's trailer was fine. Very amused by the Ninja Turtle stuff. Love the turtles. Yada yada. Blah blah blah. SF6 is a magical game. Might be in my top 3 fighting games right now. I agree. Yeah. Fantastic game. Hats off to the Capicoms. Just to spite you, I'm naming my new band the Pennsylvanians. We're playing postmodern, post-punk, junkyard, jug band, big band, and ska. Ooh, ska? Oh, that's cool. I actually remember watching both and now we get to around what the real question is. I actually remember watching both the Johnny Appleseed and Pecos Bill shorts in second grade. We're talking about the Melody Time, right? I forgot the name. Melody Time shorts. We had a whole unit on American folk and tall tales, which I still don't understand the point of. It's because it's your country's culture, you fucking Philistine. Unrelated, I remember watching some cartoon of Christopher Columbus in the first grade, and my teacher fast-forwarded the VHS past the part where he straight up shot and killed all the native people he encountered. That's such a weird... In a cartoon? Usually they kind of sanitize things, but that's really funny. What's the most racist thing you learned in school? I had an extremely revisionist education of the treatment of the Native Americans until middle school, when I had it dumped on me that my hometown had an quote-unquote Indian school. Metal Gear Solid 5 reference? I don't know. I haven't played MGS5. Do they have re-education camps? I mean, schools? P.S. Watch the live-action Wallace and Gromit. You'll lose sleep. I looked up pictures of that. I will not be watching it. So what's the most racist thing you learned in school? That's an interesting question, because when it first occurred to me, when I first read this, I was like, like nothing immediately jumped to mind. So it's almost, oh dude, the whole relationship of like schooling and race when I grew up. Okay, so I was born in a very white, very liberal town just north of Chicago. It's called Evanston, Illinois. And as with many very white, very liberal towns, the white guilt is thick enough in the air to you could smell it. It's like a haze that hangs everywhere. It is inescapable. I remember, this is so bizarre. There's so much weird, oh my god. So I remember going to school, and as like a second grader or something, there was this Mexican kid who joined our class. And you could not acknowledge the fact that he was Mexican. And I don't mean in like a teasing, mocking way, like, you Mex, whatever, like making fun of him or anything. You literally could not say, well, I'm white and you're Mexican, or hey, like you're Mexican. You could not say that because, and this was not a thing enforced by teachers. Other kids would say, dude, you can't say Mexican, that's racist. And even as a kid, I was like, what the fuck? He's just Mexican. What the fuck is wrong with saying he's Mexican? Or that I'm white or something. It's like you could not acknowledge race at all. And that was a child enforced thing. And I have a feeling that came from the weird tiptoe pussyfoot way that everyone felt about race in that town. Hey, you ever seen the movie Ordinary People? That takes place in Evanston. I watched that in high school with in a class. And I was like, oh my god. The way that movie, I don't know if it was intentional or not, or if that was just, the location they picked. That movie is 100% accurate to what Evanston culture is like. People who are too fucking scared and to say anything or to be honest or truthful. It's just this like reserved... Oh my god, I hate it, dude. All of my friends who grew up in that area hate Evanston as like a culture. It's that kind of a place. And I remember we did this weird. Okay, so I also such a weird fucking. So I have historically my entire life I've gone to Catholic schools. I'm not Catholic, but I've gone to Catholic schools. I have also gone to Catholic schools in very progressive liberal areas like this. So you get this very weird mashup of like really, really religious people and also people who were like at the same time, the same people who were very like liberal Democrats. And it's fascinating. We used to do this thing every year where No, this wasn't February. It wouldn't have been fucking February. We would have gotten obliterated by snow. It was probably around springtime, where we would make like signs. We would make these anti-racism signs, and then we would go stand outside. We would go stand outside the school on the street and like hold the signs up. Like, stop racism. And we would do that for like 20 or 30 minutes, and then we would go back inside, and that was like a yearly thing. And even by the time I was in like the 6th grade, I was like, this is weird and dumb. What? It is the most fucking, oh my god, it is the most liberal lip service shit you could ever see. We did it every year, and no one questioned it. It was just, well, oh yeah, I'm like, oh boy, we really stopped racism with that one by holding up our signs to the largely progressive community of this town. We really did it, everyone. Weird relationships with with that stuff. Yeah, when I say like, okay, I remember one of my homeroom teachers, who I had a lot of really nice teachers there. I don't want to misconstrue the school that I went to as having as being like awful or something, for me at least. I had a lot of really nice teachers who helped me out a lot, including like my 2nd grade teacher was a nun. She was awesome. She was super sweet and really like understanding. But I had this one homeroom teacher one year, and when I talk about this interesting dichotomy between extremely like conservative and progressive views, we would have a unit on like, not a unit, but we would have a thing talking about like, here's why abortion is evil. And then the next day it would be like, she would read us out a packet about the wage gap and feminism. And I was like, I'm getting whiplash, dude. What the fuck is going on here? Just the strangest. It's like, I guess people can be individuals. That's you can hold a lot of different viewpoints. It's just weird. It's just really weird. Yeah. We saw Roots in like the 8th grade. Weirdly enough, you mentioned like the historical revisionism in your question, or the sanitization of that stuff. Oh my god. So one of the things about like the way that I was taught American history, at least, is that you go over the same American history. They will not go past the 1960s when I was in like elementary, middle school. They would not go past the 1960s. You would basically review the exact same period of a couple hundred years every single year with increasing levels of detail, basically. I read a lot about... I don't remember that much about... Honestly, it's just... I don't know how much of it is just like, oh, I wasn't taught about that, or I just forgot. I do remember touching on, Native American stuff. It's also like, this is a big ass country. I don't know how you talk about everything that happened in every place. But yeah, we had a lot. I read for my English classes. I had to read a lot of racism books. I had to read a lot of books about slavery and Jim Crow and stuff like that. Fiction books. Which was like, at a certain point, it was like, I get it. It really felt like extremely hammered in when I was in school. It's like, I get it. I understand it. And I think that combined, there was a weird amount of enmity between me and that kind of a topic, because it felt very tied to the like extreme white guilt that I felt from a lot of the adults around me. So I don't know. I saw that as like an extension of that, but I guess I was told about it. So that's something. And then I think about like, oh my God, it's so obvious. So when I moved to California, when I was around 14 to start high school, I went to a school known as Junipero Serra Men's College Preparatory, which you may or may not know as the school that Tom Brady went to. That was his high school. That is the fact that Tom Brady went to my high school has been the crux of our entire funding for like 10, 15 years, or however long he's been playing. Sports. I had a really good time there. You know who else went to my high school? Peter Barsacchini, screenwriter for High School Musical, who I met at Career Day, and he was really nice. He was a really cool guy, and I told him about writing and the books I was writing, and he was really encouraging, and I sent him an email, and he was really nice. Yeah, he got back to me, and he was a really nice guy. Shout out to Peter Barsacchini. Anyway, so yeah, our school is named after a man named Junipero Serra, who was the no, he's not. Was he Franciscan? Yes, he was not Jesuit. He was not a Jesuit. He was a Franciscan friar who, excuse me, is largely responsible for founding the mission system in California. So the mission system, if you didn't know, was where they would set up these missions, which were like religious. Is compound the right word? all along the what would eventually be known as the California Territory, and they were like, "Hey, natives, you want to be Christian? You want to be civilized?" And the natives were like, "Sure, let's check out Christian. Oh, I actually like this Christianity thing. Yeah, I think I want to get baptized." And then they got baptized, and they're like, "You're a fucking slave now. You're not allowed to leave, and you're gonna do slave labor for us on the mission. Fucker. Got your ass. We got your ass." Yeah, really horrible, brutal treatment of native peoples by Catholics. I was gonna say Christians, but Catholics specifically in California on the West Coast. Just like I was reading up on it because of your comment. I'm like, let me refresh my memory on stuff. And yeah, it was very clear that even Sarah himself thought of the native peoples as almost childlike, naive, unconverted peoples who had to be baptized or else they would tragically go to hell. And yeah, once you were baptized, they owned your ass. They owned you. And I remember just kind of, so you know, naming your high school after that is like, well, it's a little interesting, you know. It poses some ethical dilemmas. Because, like, well, is the school racist? I mean, not really. Is the guy they were named after responsible for a lot of horrible, like, racial atrocities? Yeah. Also, in, like, 2018, they put in a statue of him in a really weird location. Like, right outside the pools. That was weird. I actually remember one day over the loudspeaker, they told us all to leave out of one entrance and not the other. And we were like, fuck it. That's where I parked my car or whatever, you know, that's the way that I leave the school. And so we went out and we realized the reason for that was because there was a protester outside the school with like a sign. So he was on some stop racism shit. And I was like, oh, that's weird. All right. I mean, I just go here, dude. I don't know. Okay. So I remember, honestly, there wasn't that much acknowledgement of that. I mean, it is just like the guy the school is named after. Except for when I was in... Oh, what was it? What what year was it? It was freshman or sophomore year. One year during my theology class, we had to read a book that one of our teachers had actually written on, not my theology teacher who gave the class, but one of the other ones had written a book on him. And it was this very small, thin book. And I remember reading it, and it brings up, the treatment of the native peoples. And so there's a bit in Sarah's history where the Spanish viceroy was like the Spanish military was abusing native people, and Sarah wrote on behalf of them, asking for the viceroy to rein in his soldiers and to not beat the shit out of them and, I don't know, maybe kill them? I don't know exactly the extent of what was going on. There was abuse from the military to the native population. And he protested against that, and I believe resulted in rights being established for them under Spanish law or something like that. Like under Spanish law, like in Spanish-owned territory, Native Americans would have human rights. So like that's cool that he stopped one group of people from mistreating the indigenous people. But then you just kind of did the same. Hey, that's mine to abuse. That's my slave. Yeah, kind of skimmed over that part. So that's like when I think of I don't know. It's very like it's in that really awful. It's in that obnoxious religious way. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like, hey, I'm putting my hand on your shoulder, metaphorically. Hey, I know that you've been having a lot of thoughts about your sexuality, and I just want you to know that it's okay. And when you want to come back to God and overcome these sinful thoughts, that God loves you, and I'm just looking out for you. I just care about you. You know, it's absolutely, you know what I'm talking about? It's that the most obnoxious religious person thing where they know what's best for you. Oh, they know what's best for you, and it's always what's in line with the book or whatever. And it's what makes it so bad is because in a lot of cases, a lot of those people aren't even like, they don't have malicious intent. Like you know how I remember, like, a good example, I think about, like, in a lot of Islamic countries, they'll just throw gay people off of buildings and shit and kill them. And that's not because they hate them. It's because the reasoning is that it purifies their soul. There is no other way for them to go to heaven. It's actually, in a weird way, empathetic and thoughtful. It's just, like, when you take a step back and aren't, like, super on the religion pill, you're like, this is fucked up. This is horrible. This is horrifying. The mission system, reading up on it, reminds me a lot of that. Of like, well, you know, they might be slaves, but they're in service to God, which means that it's good. It's all okay. It's all good, guys. So that's what comes to mind when I think of racist things that I was taught in school. I was honestly really racking my head for stuff, especially from my elementary, middle schooling. Excuse me, that could be thought of as being racist. And I even asked, like, one of my best friends who I went to middle school with if they remembered anything, and they really couldn't. That was like explicitly weird. Oh my god. I remember one of my teachers like stopped to explain to us the difference between like no, you can't be racist towards white people. No, because racism is privilege plus power. And at that time I was like, oh, really? I didn't know that. And then a few years later I thought back on that, I'm like, get the fuck out of here. You shut the fuck up. That's the kind of environment it was. Horribly obnoxious. Go watch Ordinary People. That's a great movie. If you're okay with horribly awkward things happening and not played for laughs, just extreme discomfort. I've never seen a movie that's better at capturing discomfort and an uncomfortable social situation more than that film. And not in the way where it's like, oh, it's played for laughs. It's oh, this is rough. It's awesome. I love that stuff. Anyway, we're going to move on to a story which I wasn't going to talk about initially, but I saw this, there was a Twitter thread that caught my eye about it. So, as you may have heard, Overwatch 2, Blizzard admitted defeat, and they put Overwatch 2 on Steam. Overwatch 2, the Blizzard game. Blizzard, the company that owns their own launcher and whole basically storefront just for their games, has released their game on someone else's platform, which is embarrassing. It's kind of like when Sonic Adventure came out on the GameCube. It's like that. Like, damn, it's really over. The dream is really dead now. So immediately Overwatch 2 became swarmed with negative reviews. The game has been getting, as many outlets have called it, review bombed. But I saw an interesting thread here, which was from a user named, oh boy, that's the wrong window. Here we go. Oh, it's on my other desktop. There it is. Yeah, here we go. All right. It's from a user named Daniel Ahmad, who I believe also posts a lot of gaming news. He writes, basically, well, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but essentially, the key details of this are that it has like a 91% negative reviews, making it the most negative user-reviewed game on Steam, which is insane. And you're like, well, no, the game's not that bad. But the details, so initially a lot of these were written off as just being review bombs and people who were just mad at the game because Blizzard hate Circle Jerk, whatever, right? And then he writes some interesting details. Nearly 2/3 of those reviews are written in South Chinese. I believe it's SS. Chinese. I'm assuming that's Southern Chinese. With 97% of them being negative. So 2/3 of all the reviews are negative reviews from Chinese users. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. Well, what are the reviews about? Why are so many of them from Chinese players? So a lot of them are pretty much like the regular complaints about the game. No PvE content, the monetization, the lack of quality of life features. Apparently there were certain like QOL things that were removed in Overwatch 2 compared to the first game, and like why? But specifically, there is a Chinese-specific issue with the game, and that is that, if you recall, did I talk about this on the podcast? A couple months ago, yeah, in January, Blizzard, so all of Blizzard's games were published, I believe published, or at least hosted in some form, in China by the company NetEase. They ended that agreement pretty abruptly. I remember when that story dropped and it was like, what? Blizzard games aren't going to be in China? That was a huge market for them. So NetEase ended their deal with Blizzard, which I believe there was some behind the scenes chicanery going on there. And this created a great deal of hostility towards Blizzard because in the process of Overwatch 2 shutting down, Chinese players just lost all their shit. They lost all of their accounts. As he writes, gamers in China have been upset over losing their accounts and ability to play on the national server because remember they can't even play internationally. They have to play on Chinese servers. With no announcement of a return so far. The launch on Steam is the first time that gamers can vent on an open and international platform. Excuse me, with many taking the opportunity to do so. God, no, I'm burping now. On a theoretical level, the Steam launch for Overwatch 2 does allow players in China to access the game again. This is because the international version of Steam is accessible in China without a VPN, and the game has a South Chinese localization. Here's the big problem, though. If they play on Steam on the international server, they have to start new accounts. They have to make new accounts. They lose all of their progress. They lose all of their purchases. They lose all their skins. They lose all their rank. They lose their whole account history. They have to start completely fresh. And as of now, there is no plan or system in place by Blizzard to be able to transfer your account or like recreate it in some way on the international server. You're just screwed. You have to start again, which is annoying as shit. Apparently, the previous worst-rated game on Steam was something called War of the Three Kingdoms, which is a card battler from a Chinese developer called Yoka. And when the Chinese don't like a game, oh my god, the wrath of God will come down. Apparently some of the Overwatch 2, the Chinese Overwatch 2 haters were going to War of the Three Kingdoms and leaving positive reviews on it so that people wouldn't, so that Overwatch 2 would keep the lead, which is hilarious. Let's see. What do Chinese players want? We conducted a survey in March 2023 that looked at Blizzard PC game players in China, both before and after the shutdown of key titles. We found that World of Warcraft and Overwatch were the most popular Blizzard PC games prior to the shutdown, both by players and time played. Overwatch gamers were most likely to switch to a similar game from a different publisher after the shutdown. Over 40% said they were considering playing the game on a global server via a VPN, and a majority, 53%, said that they would start playing the game again if it relaunched in China with a national server. In the end, it's clear that Overwatch was and still is a popular IP in China, but the string of events starting from the shutdown at the beginning of the year has led to pent-up frustration being let out all at once. So the review bombs are interesting, right? Because a lot of times if something is just overwhelmed with negative criticism, it's sort of written off as just being a review bomb, right? A senseless mass attack on a piece of media. But these are like legitimate reasons to kind of be upset at the game. I think there's a little bit of nuance here in that, okay, there are things to criticize about the game, which many other people are already criticizing. But at the same time, there's like this other element, or how do I describe this? It's like, yeah, that line at the end about all these pent-up frustrations being let out in the Steam review section. What I've heard a lot of people saying is that this is the first time that Blizzard has, because Blizzard, their games are like this walled garden because everything goes through Battle.net. So you can't see, there's no like API that you can see player counts through as far as I know. There aren't reviews that people can leave. It's just a storefront and a launcher, and that's it. It's just buy the game or play the game. Don't talk about the game. You can go to the forums, but I don't know if I trust the Blizzard forums, honestly, at this point. So this is like an opportunity for a lot of people who have been very frustrated with the game, who care a lot about the game. I don't care about Overwatch. But I think it's interesting to see all of these people who do care about the game finally being able to actually communicate their disgruntlement with the developers or the publishers. I found this in a thread that was talking about, a lot of people like bemoaning the drop in quality of Overwatch. There's something like let me see if I can find the comment that I thought was pretty interesting. It was essentially that, like, yeah, here it is. The r/games threads on the subject are so funny, filled to burst with bootlickers bemoaning the gamers for review bombing Overwatch 2, as if there isn't a thesis worth of legitimate complaints about the game and the company, as if there's no such thing as a justified negative review. Also, lots of people saying, don't blame the devs, it's all marketing / the CEO's fault, as if every shitty video game was the fault of an evil, shadowy cabal of headless suits, and not sometimes people who are just bad at their jobs. And then someone replies to that saying something that I actually found very, very vindicating in a way. I've found myself becoming less and less receptive to the don't blame the devs, blame the shareholders argument. The shareholders didn't tell the dev team to change Lucio Ball into a bland, cruddy mode. The shareholders didn't tell the devs to move to 5v5 matches. The shareholders didn't tell the dev team to erase arcade mode rewards. The shareholders didn't tell the dev team to erase all the QOL updates that were progressively added to Overwatch 1 over the years prior to Overwatch 2. You can blame C-suite and upper middle management for a lot of things, but if you take those things out and the game is still cruddy, unfun to play, and you don't even have the ability to say, this thing is unrefined but there's still an interesting concept here, then the fault lies squarely on the devs. And that was what I really wanted to talk about, which is, I wanted to shit on League of Legends! Whoa, 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 whoa! I think this is an interesting topic, is the relationship between... And I don't see people talk about it too much in any way other than, like, a very specific situation. Here's what I mean. So, video game developers have a much different relationship to their audiences than creators in almost any medium. When I think of musicians or filmmakers or novelists, poets, whoever, right? There's kind of like an amount of separation. Maybe some people will be more active in terms of, interacting with their fans online or going to conventions and stuff. But players and game developers excuse me, have this peculiar, like, much closer proximity to each other that's kind of hard to put your finger on. I think it stems from the fact that gaming as an industry stems from being... It really grew out of being a hobby. Yeah, like it was like an enthusiast hobby. A lot of early days gaming were these very small communities of people who, I have to mute a fucking Discord thing because it's distracting me. Okay, now I can get back on my train of thought. Oh, chugga chugga choo choo. Oh no, now the chugga chugga choo choo really derailed my train of thought. I think it comes... it might be interesting to look at, like, a history of this, and I'd be curious to know what you guys think about it, actually. Because I feel like this sort of... The fact that a lot of early gaming communities were these kind of small, insular spaces. I don't know. I think of stuff like... I mean, Christ, is... John Romero used to play Doom multiplayer with just regular people. Like, he would just go and play his game with people and stuff like that. And he was a very early person who was, like, really involved. That was, like, when he was, like, one of the first... I don't know, it's kind of cringy to say rock star game devs. But, like, that sort of, oh, there's a face on this. You think you know the guy's name or something, and it's popular. Now there's another Discord server. Mute for 3 hours. There we go. I think, I don't know. It's not a super hardened out idea yet, but I think it's interesting how there's a very personal level between players and developers, and which means that there's it's like the pendulum swings back and forth, where it used to be a thing of you want to blame the developers because they made the thing, right? And then it starts coming out this is 10, 15, 20 years ago perhaps. And it starts coming out, oh, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you don't know about. There's a lot of studio oversight. I mean, there's countless stories of studios basically having someone come in and screwing a bunch of stuff up. And that kind of sort of the pendulum swinging in the opposite direction. There's always going to be people who yell and send death threats to developers and stuff like that, right? But in the past few years, the modern consensus, or a very common thing, is to just assume that the corporation is bad, because the corporation is usually bad. Excuse me. But there's these exceptions. I mean, it's there's no absolute truths, right? The only absolute truth is that there's no absolute truths. And my neck. So this has become a common thing of no, it's probably the publisher that's ruining it, or what have you. And then now I wonder if is it swinging back in the other way, where it's okay, there's a really interesting What Happened episode, if you guys know What Happened, that show by Matt McMuskles. It's about Metroid Other M, which is a game that was, I believe to this day, pretty disliked among even regular people and not just Metroid fans. A lot of people don't really care for that game. A lot of people dislike it outright. I haven't played it, but I know how controversial it was. And you kind of imagine that, oh, there had to have been something really messed up behind the scenes that caused the game to come out like this. And then the What Happened episode goes into a lot of detail about how, no, actually, there was very little, managerial meddling. This was pretty much the game that the developers wanted to make. There was no suit coming in and messing with their, corrupting their pure artistic vision. This was the exact game that the director and the developers wanted to make, and they made it without issue. It was a shockingly smooth development process, and the game came out, and people just didn't like it. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes, creatives are not always right, Creatives don't always... Not everything they'll make is amazing. It isn't just because, there was no oversight. That stuff... There's also, there's cases where sometimes creator managerial oversight might, help a project. I'm trying to think of an example. I've totally heard of examples of that. Anthem. Anthem was entirely the fault of just bad management on the team, within the team itself, right? And the only thing that people thought was cool about that game was the flying, and the only reason that stuck in the game was because some suit from EA walked in and was like, "Oh, the flying's cool. You guys should keep that." And they did, and it's the one thing that anyone liked about the game. Do you even remember Anthem? Do you even remember it? The Bob Dylan of video games? So, such a funny quote. I remember, with Riot, playing a lot of when I played a lot of League of Legends, I remember this thing with Riot where everyone's always mad at Riot. playing League of Legends for so long, it felt like having an alcoholic parent, where like you come home and you're like, oh boy, is mom gonna pass out on the cat? Oh boy, do I gotta microwave a lasagna for dinner tonight? That's what like Riot felt like. That's what it's like. Oh, please don't fuck the game up. Please don't fuck the game up. Please don't fuck the game up. It's like you were just waiting. You were just dreading the next decision they made that would just completely throw the game out of whack and fuck things up for seemingly no reason. When was the next champion going to come out that was completely busted and became the dominant thing? When was the new item rebalancing going to come out that changed the game in this bizarre way to make a really unfun meta? When's the next champion going to get reworked so that they again become super centralizing? When is there going to be new weird changes to the dragon? Why do they keep changing the dragon? And all of these things, it's like these were 100% their decisions. Like the guy in finances, like honestly, if anything, a lot of people, they'll blame marketing. In reality, it's usually finances who controls or who influences monetization in games. So let's be accurate for a second. The monetization in League of Legends got substantially better over the time that I played it. Like, it is actually really easy in the modern day, at least the last time that I played a few years ago. I imagine it's still the same. It's really easy to just get characters and to get even like a skin every now and again for free. And it's actually very generous and rewarding. Probably because they realize that champions don't like earn them a lot of microtransaction money, so they're okay with just handing them to you at a faster rate. The game is way easier to just get free shit in now, ever since they introduced the crate system and they switched over to using blue essence, ever since they took out fucking rune and mastery pages. Dude, original runes, I'm not going to go on a rant about original runes, that's for another day. I've probably already gone on a rant about it. But the game got like substantially easier and like better and more player friendly in the ways that a lot of people like I assume are going to get worse because of corporate oversight. And then all the fuck ups are just on the developing part. It's just on like the balancing and the design team. Like what? And they would repeatedly make it very clear that, like, no, this is our vision for the game. This is this is what we want. This is Riot's vision. They used to be, I think they've gotten better at this over time. Riot used to be the worst in terms of just never backing down. When they made a new decision, they would not reverse it. They would do something really dumb with the game, and then they would just keep it, and they'd be like, no, you're going to play it like this for 6 months minimum. I got very kind of annoyed and sort of, I don't know, it just kind of, a lot of times I felt like Riot carried themselves in this very obnoxious way where they acted like they were these incredible auteurs and psychologists. I remember reading a comment one time that was like, I'm really sick of modern day live service game devs treating them like acting like they're trying to play these armchair psychologists for their players. And I agree. I find that annoying. It's this very like up and high and mighty. We're creating fine art. We're creating League of Legends. That just, I don't know, man. This is the problem is that, like, see, if everyone was reasonable and rational, it would be fine to just say, well, just look at it on a case-by-case basis. I think it's better to not initially blame the developers, right? I think it's probably better to say blame corporate or whatever, but the problem is that not everyone is rational. That's why I think that's better. Because not everyone's rational. If everyone was rational and clear and calm-headed, cool-headed, they would just be able to say, oh, I'll just look at this on a case-by-case basis. What is it? Where does the blame really lie for this decision? And then I will direct my ire towards them in a way that is not criminal. But a lot of people, especially, wow, shocker, people who are in a largely sedentary, solitary hobby can also be really antisocial and like maladjusted. That's crazy. Yeah, those people are frequent in gaming culture and discussion, and they will send horrible pictures. They will send a community manager a picture of the route that their children walk to on Google Maps. Kind of shit. So you have to create a culture of not initially blaming the developers for things. You got just because of those people. You have to like idiot proof. I hate it. I hate it so much. You have to idiot proof your own like discussion, which is annoying. Anyway, I thought that was interesting about Overwatch 2. Maybe the game is just bad. Maybe it's just badly handled. Although from what I do remember, there was a bit of part of the reason for the way that the slow development of the game and the splitting of resources between it and Overwatch 1 had to do with, I remember a tweet a while ago. It had to do with with actual Blizzard management of the team that would like start things and then stop things, and then there was some bad management going on. And I do think that there's probably some shared blame, but at the same time, I don't know. Maybe we'll get an expose at some point and we'll find out who is responsible for what and all that. That'll be fun. Hey, you want to hear another thing about people not, about like creatives being left to make whatever they want and it not going very well? Katrina and I watched Superman Solar, which came out like a few days ago, something like that. Superman Solar is a new Superman fan film by a guy who was, from what I understand, somewhat involved with Spider-Man Lotus, which you might remember or may not remember as being that Spider-Man fan film that was like, how long is it? It's on YouTube. How long is it? It's 2 hours, and it was directed, the director and the star, the Spider-Man himself, were outed for just dropping N-bombs all over the place, like it's like they're over the Ho Chi Minh Trail, if you know what I'm talking about. From those N-bombs. So which meant that it got delayed for like a year for some reason. We were gonna watch it, but it got delayed and I had to go home. So yeah. Apparently Superman Solar was like, that was our warm-up for Spider-Man Lotus, which I'm kind of curious to watch with her, because Superman Solar is also, it's not good. It's like 20 minutes, so it's not the worst thing in the world. I feel a little bad picking on a fan film. At the same time, it was a thing that was put in front of my eyes that had a decent amount of money put into it for what it was. And it is trying to be good. So I don't want to harp on it too much, but it is kind of hilariously bad in certain ways. It's bizarrely structured. It feels like it's obviously a very amateurish script. It just has these weird pacing starts and stops. Like, when you're like, oh, this is not good. When when you're like, it seems like the plot is going somewhere, and then all of a sudden a scene starts, and it feels like a completely new movie, and it has begun, and you're like, oh no, they didn't know about pacing, choppy pacing. So it's like a Superman fan film about Superman trying to talk this guy out of jumping off of a building, which is, I believe, a direct reference to a very famous issue of All-Star Superman, where he does a very similar thing. And in this one, the conversation that they have is this weird framing device to show scenes of Superman doing things and moments from his life. And the acting is bad. The worst part is, so the guy who plays the kid who's Superman's talking down is not bad. He's not a terrible actor. Also, there's a guy who plays Lex Luthor who appears for like 2 minutes, and he is also actually a pretty decent actor. The guy who plays Superman is the worst actor in the whole thing, and he's in like 100% of the movie. There's a lot of weird green screen shots that just feel jarring, where it's not even... It's like a city shot. I'm pretty sure it was just because they couldn't get lighting. They couldn't get like good lighting on the what would you call it? On in the actual like on location shots, so they just took the shot and then green screen the actors into it so that they could control the lighting better. There's some really bad day for night. It's just not very good. If anything, it's like it's a decent portfolio reel for some of the actors and the CG animators, which the CG in this movie is surprisingly pretty decent. It's not bad. I can't wait. If this, I have not watched. I'm trying to think of fan films I've watched. This one, I forced Kat to watch like a 2.5 hour Sailor Moon fan film. I think it's just called like Sailor Moon the Movie or something, which is also awesome and really boring. Sailor Moon Movie. What is it? Yeah, Sailor Moon the Movie. It's fucking 2 hours and 20 minutes long. Uploaded on the YouTube channel Sailor Moon the Movie. It's also not good, but it is kind of enjoyable. I enjoy it. I love garbage. I love complete garbage. So I enjoyed it, but Kat likes good things for some reason. Why do people like good things and dislike bad things? I don't understand. So I am really excited to watch Spider-Man Lotus and have my socks knocked off. I hope he calls me a slur. I hope he calls me a slur. I have not watched it yet. What else do we have on the docket? Oh, the Nickelodeon marathon. Whoa, 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 what? So the Nickelodeon marathon. Our next up, it's actually perfect timing, and I was happy to watch it. It was the 2014. I can't believe it was 2014. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, the Michael Bay one, the first one. I mean, we weren't gonna watch the second one first, but we were obviously. This was actually pretty interesting, having just watched Mutant Mayhem. I say it's the reasons it's interesting is because that's like actually a really good movie. Mutant Mayhem was actually really good. Surprisingly really good for what I was, I had no real expectations going into it. And I don't really know anything about, I know the basics about Ninja Turtles. The Bay Turtles are like... It made me appreciate Mutant Mayhem a lot more. So the Bay Turtles movie, it's not very good. It's below average, I would say. I don't like to rate things on a scale, but it's like a 4 out of 10. I remember we were eating like dinner at Kat's house one time, and I could see the TV in the living room from where I was sitting, and her mom was watching like the latest. Oh, no, it was Transformers: The Last Night. I think that's the one that it was. And there's like a scene where they're in. It's like an opening. It's like an early action scene or something with a bunch of kids. There's this one kid. He's wearing a shirt that says "Football is my girlfriend," which is awesome. And it's like a war zone thing. And I was watching it, and for like a solid minute, I thought that it was behind the scenes footage. And then I realized, oh no, this is a real movie. It's just that everything... Michael Bay movies, I was trying to put it into words, and it's so difficult for me to describe. Michael Bay's movies don't feel like movies. I think I heard one time that they feel like music videos, which I think is more apt, but there's even something beyond it. It's the way that he always has the camera moving, like all the time. He is this obsession with having the camera move in every single shot. He's very, I mean, if he wants to make a dynamic looking scene, he can do it, but like all the time. It's, I don't know, something about the color grading in his movies, the lens flares are really weird. Something about it just like doesn't, it just doesn't work for me. I imagine it works for someone, but not me. It's like very stylized, but in a bad way, you know? Like, I guess the running theme of this is creatives with too much control. I should have talked about the Star Wars prequels in this. Okay, so the Bay Turtles, right? I would describe the movie overall as being low impact. This film is really strange because for like the first 40%, it's not a Ninja Turtles movie. It's an April O'Neil movie with Megan Fox. And then like around that 40% mark, it like remembers that it's a Ninja Turtles movie, and they stop being side characters and start slowly becoming main characters, except 3 of them are gone. And then and then by the end it's like fully a Ninja Turtles movie, but they have not established the Ninja Turtles in any kind of strong way. So when the movie's emotional core tries to be about the Turtles, these 4 characters, these brothers, it completely falls flat. So okay, I can see what they were trying to go for, and maybe it would have worked if it wasn't a movie. If this had been like, how long is this thing? Is it 2 hours? It's 1 hour and 41 minutes. This could have benefited from like an extra maybe 20 minutes. And that might sound weird, but it really needs a little bit of work. It needs more work with the characters. It essentially starts out with like, okay, I see what they're going for. April O'Neil is this plucky young reporter. She's investigating these mishaps, these crimes around the city by the so-called Foot Clan, and there's like a weird minute-long introduction that's just Splinter narrating about the Turtles, and then it gets dropped, and then it's just, I don't know, it feels very shoehorned in. The movie is really, it starts with April, and she's trying to get a scoop on the Foot Clan, and she sees she sees the Ninja Turtles one night. And she's like, what the hell? Well, she doesn't see that they're turtles yet. She just sees that there's someone out there. And so she takes the story to her editor, and the editor's like, who's Whoopi Goldberg, she's like, you sound really stupid right now. So April's like, I gotta get another scoop. So she runs into the turtles again on another Foot Clan attack, and they're like, she encounters them and records them, and they're like, oh, we're Ninja Turtles, and this is like, it feels like 30 minutes into the movie. It takes really long to even see the Ninja Turtles like in person, in the shell. And then by that time, this whole plot has kickstarted with this guy. His name is Sack. He's working with the Spreader, and he's gonna make a thing with the turtle blood. Again, back to the milking element. There's more milking in this, just like in Mutant Mayhem. And he's gotta get the turtles to milk their blood because it has this like panacea in it that will cure any disease and like regenerate cells. It's the ooze. And he's gonna release. He's like a Metal Gear Rising character. He's gonna release a big toxin over the city, and like kill a bunch of people, and then be like, "Hey, I have the cure. It's in my ooze." It's a big false flag operation. And then he kidnaps like 3 of the turtles, and Raphael he gets left behind because they think he's dead, and then Splinter gets completely fucked up by the Spreader. And then Raphael and April and that Vern guy from the cartoon have to go stop the Spreader. And they do that. So you see what I mean? Where it's like, it's largely April focused, and there's not a lot of... It's weird. It doesn't feel like you get this despite the fact that the movie is apparently about that, it's named after them, you don't really get like a introduction to them as characters. They just kind of show up, and they're like they have like banter, and you get a sort of idea for their personality, but they feel like side characters in their own movie. And then by the climax, they've graduated towards main characters. And it's really weird feeling, because all the whole... April should have been the side character. She should have been the side character. Her whole deal is she's trying to get recognized for her reporting abilities. But I don't give a fuck about that. I'm here to watch some big turtle guys. I'm here to watch them fight goons. Someone's yelling in Spanish out there. I'm here to see them fight some footmen. Ooh, sounds weird. They don't have like a very strong like in that initial. I just think of Mutant Mayhem. The way that you're introduced to those characters is when they're on the rooftop. Leonardo's doing his like cool Batman voice, and then it kind of pans out, and there's like a minute, there's a whole minute dedicated to just a little comedic scene of them interacting, and you get a really decent idea of each of their personalities. And there's like some it's clear that they get along and they're brothers, and there's overlap between them, but they have their own distinct sorts of things going on. I'm sure if I watched it again and paid attention to the dialogue, I could probably remember a couple specific things. But like, there's just constant good characterization. Every single one of those characters in that movie feels very unique, and you can understand each of their motives, even when they're like all aligned. Like, each of them approach the same situation in different kind of ways, and like that's why they have such a strong. They make a really strong impression, if that makes sense. In the Bay Turtles, they just kind of have like tongue-in-cheek banter. Does that make sense? They make some cultural references, and they make some jokes, and they don't feel particularly like I don't know how I describe it. They don't feel like particularly like they're expressing anything unique. It's like, okay, it's like when there's like a comic relief character, but the comic relief character is a voice for the writer and not the character. It isn't like, this is a joke that this character would find funny. This is a joke that the writer hopes the audience will laugh at. Does that make sense? They feel like puppets, more so than the Jim Henson version, which I have not seen, but I'm assuming they feel less like puppets there. So there's this weird shift where then, like, by the end they're having this crazy fight with the spreader, and like they think that they're gonna die. It's like weirdly, it's so weird. You could make a direct parallel. Maybe that would be a fun video. A direct parallel, not for me to make, but a direct parallel between this movie and scenes from this film and scenes from Mutant Mayhem, because there's like also a scene where like they all think they're gonna die, and they all like, oh, what's your last words and all that. They do the same like last words bit in both films, and in Mutant Mayhem it's like, oh, this is actually like kind of sweet. It works because, oh, you know the relationship between all of them. You see how they get along. You see how they kind of clash a little bit. And then, but at the end, it's like, oh, they really do care about each other. In this one, Raphael has this whole big spiel about how he's like, oh, every time I was mean to you guys and I pushed you guys, it's because I believe in you. And it's this like incredible, emotional monologue speech as they're falling to their deaths, and I was like, this movie did not earn this. This film is not. I do not care at all about these characters enough for this to have any kind of an impact on me. It's so weird. You spend so little time with the actual turtles as a group. They're split up for so much of it because they get kidnapped like halfway through, and like, I don't know. It's just the movie completely fails to sell you on the turtles or their bond as characters. It does more to sell the interracial relationship between Michelangelo and April O'Neil, which is also like it's a thing. They always got to have that, I guess. Just low. Hey, speaking of low impact, the action in this movie sucks. Maybe it's because we were watching it on like a small laptop screen. But everything feels really like too tight. Everything feels too like it's shot in a way that's just, it's too narrow. I can't really see what's going on. The camera's always moving around. It's really dark. There's probably decent choreography somewhere in there, but there's a lot of things in the film that just feel like, honestly, the lack of the turtles in the early parts of the movie feel like they're covering for the budget. Like they're trying not to spend too much money excuse me, on the horrifying CGI, where they don't. Yeah, the cat made the comment on Mutant Mayhem that in that movie they feel a lot like teenagers, which I agree with. And again, the contrast to this one is kind of staggering. Michael Bay or whoever was the screenwriter, their equivalent to teenager talk, I guess, is have them make pop culture references, and that's sort of it. They don't really they don't feel immature, not really. Again, they're lacking a lot of characterization beyond the very basics of what they're supposed to be. Donatello's the big nerd. He's the big nerd, and Leonardo is leader, and Michelangelo likes white women. But other than that, it's like it's like banking off of you being familiar with the characters from other material. Oh, you know what happens? They say cowabunga in this movie, and it's supposed to be like, oh, they say cowabunga. And Kat looked at me and she was like, they didn't say that a single time in Mutant Mayhem. And you know what that is? That's restraint. and I 100% agree with her. You know why they didn't say Cowabunga in Mutant Mayhem? You know why they said Cowabunga initially? You know why that's a Ninja Turtles thing? Because in the 80s, when that comic came out, that was stupid teenager talk. There was a stupid teenage slang word somewhere. It was supposed to be dumb because it was like a parody. What's a dumb thing teenagers say? You know what? If the Ninja Turtles were written today as just like a fresh thing that didn't exist before, they would be saying sus. They would be saying Riz. And shit like that. They would not be saying Cowabunga in 2023. And then, in like the word Riz would be carried forward like 30 years in pop culture purely because of adaptations of this one property. Did they never say that? Man, yeah, this really makes me appreciate Mutant Mayhem a lot more. I guess the design for Shredder is sort of neat. He's like a cyborg Shredder. He's got these like crazy blade attachments on his arms that he like flicks out, and he can throw the blades out and then return them to him via magnetism, which is kind of a neat gimmick. It's there. There's some kind of funny scenes where the spreader is talking to other characters, and one of them will just start talking in Japanese, usually the Japanese guy, and they won't have subtitles as far as I can tell. We watched it with subtitles on the site we watched it on. But then the other person will just reply in English for the American audience for their sake. So that was kind of funny. There's a horrible moment where Vern, who finally, believes that, they're actually big turtles, and she's like, no, they're like vigilantes, they're like crime fighters, and he goes, Heroes in the Half Shell? And I cringed out of my skeleton walked out of my body, said I'm out. The whole thing is just very weird and low impact. Just like a gentle, oh, okay, I never really cared about what was going on. Some things were sort of fun to make fun of. But for the most part, it's just a lot of Michael Bay visual, directorial Michael Bay-isms. There's a shot of Megan Fox's ass. There's a lot of stuff. It's bad. It's I don't know if it's the maybe we should oh god, that's totally going to be our next marathon. She's going to make me watch all the Ninja Turtles movies. Actually, that might be fun. I've heard that like the old, like the Jim Henson one is good. I know the second one has Vanilla Ice, who's my favorite white person. And yeah, I legitimately cannot think of, it's a very forgettable movie. There's one scene where they're in the elevator. It's the trailer scene. It's where they're in the elevator and they start doing a little rap. And it's like, this might have been fun if I knew anything about these characters at all. Yeah, don't watch it. They also look creepy and weird, and I don't like it. We're going to talk about some games. So I played a couple new games this week. One of them I'm going to mention it first just because it's I didn't play too much of it, but I did want to mention it. It's called Dungeon of the Endless, and it is a neat little, how do I describe it? It's basically like a roguelike with tower defense elements to it. So the premise is that you're this little ship of survivors that's crash landed deep in the depths of this alien planet, and you have to you have this beacon in your ship that you have to take to the surface. So you progress through the ship, and I believe probably maybe through I think just through like the parts of the ship. You're like deep in the ship, and you have to You take 2 survivors, from what I can tell. You take 2 of the 2 characters with their different stats and sometimes their different abilities and things like that. And you move them from room to room, controlling each of them independently. You just click to which room you want to go to. You explore. There's nodes in each room that you can build things on. So you have some resources. You have like resource generators that you can build to generate your resources. You're more of them, and then you can put down like little turrets on these nodes, because the game is so the characters themselves can attack, but the game is designed in a way where when it throws like maybe even just 2 waves at you in the early game, it's pretty scary, and two characters probably can't take all of that on safely. So you want to build some defenses and be careful. So, but you have a limited amount of resources to build your defenses with. So you have to kind of balance, okay, do I want to like reinforce every single room? Because that's kind of unsustainable. Or do I want to, take my chances, go into this new area, and then maybe just maybe kite them back out all the way. And it's fun. It's pretty cool. I believe it's also playable in co-op, so you can check that out. Dungeon of the Endless. And then I was playing a demo for a game called The Crystal Project. And this game is, okay, so this game's really cool. It is, hey, Final Fantasy V? Remember that game? You want more of that? Like, you want like a whole other game that's just that idea, just the job system from FF5? It's that. The Crystal Project is an extremely gameplay-focused RPG styled after FF5, where the whole premise is that you have this party of characters, and there is a giant job/class system, and you can switch out what class each character is, and they will gain new abilities as they level up in that class, and then you can like mix and match them to create these cool team compositions. And it is great. It's really cool. It has a free demo, but I'm like 6 hours in and it's still going. There's like at least two big areas that I haven't even really touched yet. It has this very charming voxel graphics style. Obviously a send up. There's many elements that are just a direct send up to FF5. There's first of all, the menus are extremely similar. The layout of the options is very similar. Even like the attack names, like the spell names are really, like the healing spell is called Cure, stuff like that. There's basically no story. It's just kind of like you're adventuring. You're going from one area to another, and they've all got very different looks, and there's a lot to explore. So this game is an RPG, but it's also a send up to getting over it, because goddamn, there's a lot of platforming. And the platforming actually feels pretty good. The jump feels good. It's just taking your character on the overworld, and you're just jumping from like one spot to another. And there is tons of stuff hidden away. In just the first starting area, there's a bunch of just hidden chests and places where, you can jump on this ledge and then jump on this and then jump over here, and there's a secret like passage hidden behind a wall over here, and then you walk through there and you jump up here and there's another chest. There is so much packed into these areas that I would spend just minutes on minutes exploring and not fighting anything, just exploring stuff, because there's despite the fact that there aren't really movement mechanics besides jumping, it's I'm like, oh, dude, I can totally get up there. Like, you see a chest and you're like, how do I get up there? The combat is I missed this style of combat. I missed some good old turn-based combat. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I do enjoy it. It is not the action time battle. It is turn-based. It is based off of, I believe, speed. Some stat like that of each character. It's really fun. Once you kind of complete some of the larger, like you got to beat some bosses, and once you do that, they will usually reward you with a crystal, much like how in FF5 you would get to the crystals, and then they would give you a new job. You would unlock a new job. There's these little spinning kind of cubes, which they seem like save points. They're not. You can save anywhere. These cube things are called home points. And from the home points, you can change what classes each of your characters are. You can set each one as a home point, and then teleport to your new. And then if you find another one, you can teleport back to your home point. You can't fast travel around, unfortunately. You can create templates, which is cool. You can create basically a setup. You can save a setup of whatever your current party is of class and things equipped, so that you can have a dedicated, like, this is my boss killing setup or something like this is my farming setup. They're called templates, which is a great quality of life feature. That's awesome. And I don't know how to it's just really cool. It has a very pleasing art style. Very simple, like, we're going to do some 2D sprites with some 3D, very voxel art looking environments. The combat is pretty snappy. There's a lot of information that's accessible to you. Like, you can just see what enemies are weak to and stuff like that once you encounter them a single time. It has like that comprehensive bestiary thing going on. It's just a really fun game to explore in. Very simple, straightforward, satisfying gameplay. I love the whole thing of unlocking classes. You can then set. So in FF5, you started out with what was called a freelancer, and freelancers could essentially set up whatever array of different abilities from any class that you wanted. And then by the end of the game, that's pretty much just what you're doing. You're taking all the strongest, like, combat jobs and all that, and then you're setting up a team like that with a bunch of freelancers and just mixing and matching the abilities. This game, from what I can tell so far, does not have something like that. Maybe by the end. So you're just kind of switching between different classes, but every single class you can switch. Actually, no, I think this was a thing in 5 as well, if I'm not mistaken. Has a sub class. So the main class is the one that you'll gain experience on. You'll gain you have a separate experience, which is just your character's stats. And then you have, what are they called? Level points or something like that, which are specifically used to upgrade the class-specific skill tree. So whatever your primary class is where you will earn points towards, and then your subclass will just be there for you to have, like, an additional set of abilities to use, which is great. It's just FF5 is such a fun ass game. One of the more underrated ones, I think, outside of Japan. I know Japan loves 5, and for good reason. It is genuinely, like, gameplay wise, one of the most solid, fun Final Fantasies. I love the job system in that game, and clearly someone else did, because the whole game is based around that. This came out last year in March. It has workshop integration. That's interesting. Can you, like, make your own classes? That's cool. That'd be neat. Yeah, there's like a slight. So one of the things that I liked about 5 was that every single character had a different outfit depending on what class they are. This one, there's a single sprite. Well, there's a male and female version of every class, and then it's just whatever that one. They're whatever the character is. There's like one sprite that they're gonna be. Did I say that right? My brain's starting to throw down. Throw down? Slow down. Oh my god, it really is starting to slow down. All I'm trying to say is that the party composition is like, what character is this? What character is that? But it's not really too bad. Also, this does the Earthbound thing, where there's no random encounters. There are little flames on the ground that are basically enemies, and they will run towards you. They'll speed towards you if they make line of sight. You can actually hide from them, and then you will. Then if you touch, then you'll commence a battle. There's no like getting surprised from behind or something like that. It's just straight up. There's no like way to play it where it's like, oh, you can sneak up on an enemy and get the first turn or something like that. No, it's pretty much just like you can in like Persona, say. You're just gonna have a fight. It's really cool. It's a really cool game. Platforming is surprisingly fun. You can pretty much go. There are ways. There's routes to get kind of like, it feels like anywhere in the game, and it's just good. The Crystal Project, check it out. How many reviews does this thing have on Steam? About 1,000. Yeah. Oh man, only like 1,000, like 1,500. Yeah. Absolutely, I would recommend this to anyone. Even just try the demo. Like the demo, I am like almost overwhelmed with how much content is just in the demo. There's at least like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like 5 big ass areas that will take you like an hour or two, maybe, depending on how thorough you want to be. But I would recommend like exploring and searching around for stuff, because even just like finding, even if the rewards are just like, hey, here's like a health potion, it feels rewarding. It's like I don't know, because the figuring out the way to get there was fun. Yeah, the music's good. It's just really cool. Yeah, the Crystal Project. I would totally recommend it. I really got to start playing. I've been itching to play a JRPG, and I think this is scratching that itch. I didn't realize I had it. It's like when you have an itch on your head, and you got to scratch it. I think that's maybe it for. That might be it for today. We might have a shorter episode. Yeah, see if I didn't have that bonus episode, I would have talked for goddamn ever about Evo. You all would have gotten bored. But now we're not. We're having a short hour, about 40-minute episode. Excuse me. I recently put out a video on the side channel, which was just doing a tier list of all the male Mortal Kombat Ninja designs. Oh yeah, I mentioned that on the bonus episode. And that video did like really well. And I was like, you know what? It did better than the last video did in terms of like the actual like main channel, on the main channel. And I was like, you know what? So be it. I would have clicked on it too. I might make another one just because it was fun. I kind of want to do the female Mortal Kombat ninjas too, which I'll probably be more negative about, but hey. See, that's a little teaser. That's a teaser. I can start teasing for multiple channels now. And the next video is also in the works. I think it's cool. I think it's a neat topic. Did I got anything else? No, not really. Okay. So, well, if you've been listening this long, thank you for listening to me ramble. If you have a question, please feel free to leave it down in the comments below, but leave it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Nothing else to say. Have a gay day.